Okay, if you're watching or if you're listening and not watching, you didn't understand what just happened there, the moment of silence, if you will. But I was doing my best John Cena impression. Uh, Chad seemed very impressed by it. So this is episode 537 of the My 123 Cents podcast. I am Kevin Huntsberger, joined once again by Chad Smart. And we're obviously going to be talking about Elimination Chamber because, quite frankly, it is uh, all I have seen, not all I have seen, but it is much of what I have seen on my feed this week or this weekend. So, Chad, we'll get to it in just a moment. But how are things going for you? And I know you obviously are watching much more than I am in terms of wrestling. So, how has the week of wrestling looked in your perspective, or from your perspective?
Yeah, there's an Elimination Chamber pay-per-view. I thought we were going to talk about AEW Revolution, which will be in attendance for next
That's
week.
right. That's next weekend, isn't it?
Yes,
Or
and
I
I get
guess as
this
people are listening this weekend. So,
this weekend, and I will get to feel the boom as the Costco guys will be there.
are they? You sent me a snap. Are they actually wrestling?
They are teaming with Orange Cassidy and Mark Briscoe to take on Johnny TV and the MXM collection. So hopefully I'll be able to touch tips. Come on, Kevin, touch tips with me right now.
All right, we're doing it. We're doing it. Um,
Yeah, I don't know why they put Orange and Mark Briscoe into a match with actual guys that have been pushed against guys that are seemingly, mid carders. But yeah,
Now, remind me the main Costco guy. What is his wrestling name?
AJ, Big Boom AJ, I think.
Big Boom. Okay. What didn't he wrestle QT Marshall with
Yeah,
a broken foot or
he
broken
broke his foot during the match. Yeah,
broke his foot during the match? Okay. Or
yeah,
preparing for the match, I think.
yeah, somewhere around there.
So I'm assuming he's healed.
Um, yeah, but I
That
think he's a face.
what's that?
I think he's the face.
Oh God. Okay. I deserve that one. I walked right into it.
Yeah.
So and we've talked about this before, I know there's online hate about the celebrity aspect
Mhm.
of it and bringing it in, but we're going to see that as we talk about Elimination Chamber here in just a few minutes as well. I think it's good. I think that it probably does get some extra eyeballs on AEW and its product, and the Costco guys are, whether we like it or not, they're over. It's kind of like the whole Logan Paul situation,
Mhm.
or I know there's a little bit of a difference there, but bringing in the pop culture world into wrestling. I
Mhm.
know, I think I don't want to even say criticism of it is, but there was once upon a time where AEW, Tony Khan, and many of the fans were, that was kind of what they founded AEW on, or the premise was supposed to be,
Mhm.
it's all about the wrestling. Well, it's really hard to just be about wrestling in a wrestling company, I think, in 2025.
Mhm. No, I would agree. And we look back over the history of the celeb, coming into wrestling. I think we've talked about this before that there's a difference. I mean, wrestling has evolved over the last even 10 years to where, before you would bring in a celebrity like, and I'm racking my brain. I think back to Lawrence Taylor, Mr. T, guys that had name value but weren't actually the most athletic or um, they were there basically to be. I mean, Jay Leno, when WCW brought him in to team with DDP, Carl
Yeah,
Malone, and that was, you felt more like just trying to get the casuals to watch, even though I can't think of too many people would have watched the match with Jay Leno and said, you know what, I'm going to start watching this because wrestling is awesome.
hmm
However, now with the Logan Pauls, with Big Boom AJ, who is a former wrestler,
hmm
he's not, he's not the best. I don't see him hopefully ever being AEW champion or even being a full time AEW
right.
wrestler. But even going back to with Snooki, Snooki had some athletic background
hmm
to in, so they're bringing in people down that can actually, um, even Stephen Amell. I'm just going to keep
Yeah.
naming random celebrities as they come to mind. Um, but what the point is, you're getting people who, one, respect the business, I think, more than
Right.
used to, and two, want to put on a good match. They're not just there to do a body slam and collect a paycheck.
Yeah. No, I think that
Yeah.
I agree. I don't
Yeah.
disagree with
And I
you.
would say, with Big Boom AJ, like I didn't know who they were before they came, they started popping up on AEW because I don't watch TikTok.
Hmm.
And I've seen some of their videos. I don't get, I'm not going to be an avid watcher. I'm not going to do it. But again, I understand social media branding or content creating,
Yeah.
which I would say 95% of it is not my thing.
Hmm.
But I think in terms of good publicity and even like wholesomeness, there is something to that to the AJ. It's
Sure.
and I mean we can compare that to Logan Paul, who again has been great in his WWE run, but his outside ventures are less than, I don't want to say honorable, but
Right.
he's got baggage that comes with it.
Right.
Right.
He's controversial.
There you go.
Yeah, like you said, I think the Costco guys are pretty wholesome, and unless it gets revealed that they buried a bear in Central Park, or cut
Yeah.
up a whale and ate it or something.
Yeah. I mean,
I
it's
think
I
they're
do find
okay.
it odd that the Rizzler, who is actually not part of them, but closely associated, is the Black Panther. That I'm surprised hasn't been called out yet, but and hopefully he'll show up and turn heel. So
The heel 10-year-old, or however old they are. Well, so we'll check in next week with you, and probably because that pay-per-view is on Sunday, isn't it?
yeah,
Okay, yeah, we'll do a bonus or do something during the week, and get your thoughts on uh, Revolution out in Los Angeles.
yeah,
Should be a good recap and
should be a good show.
interesting. Do you think Mox and or Cope is going to win the championship?
I don't know. I don't think Cope should, but at the same time, I think he should, just because I don't think the Death Rider storyline is really that engrossing to the audience. It's probably the of the matches that have been announced, that is the one I'm least looking forward to. Until they add an Adam Cole TNT title rematch, in which case I know when I will be hitting the concession stands. But um, yeah, and speculation has been the Cope wins, then Christian has the money in the clipboard contract that he can get a title shot, and that he would cash in and take the title from Cope. But they've already done that with the TNT title like 6 months ago or a year, whatever it was. So hopefully they won't do that again. But and I'm sure Mox and Cope will have a decent match, but I think the main event should be Tony Storm and Mariah May in the Hollywood ending Falls Count Anywhere match, because I think that story is better told. As I said last time on the show, that
That's why you weren't invited back last week. You
yeah,
had to sit in timeout for your. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But okay, well, it's good stuff.
yeah.
I would be curious to see, has AEW closed a pay-per-view out with the women before, as far as you can
I
remember?
can't recall. I know they. I mean, they just did the Australian Grand Slam with Tony and Mariah being
Yeah.
but that was in Australia, which is where Tony's from. She won the
Hmm.
title back. It was just a TV, episode. So, but I don't think they've done a pay-per-view.
Interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they do there, and
Yeah.
this, I guess, seems like a good transition then into Elimination Chamber women's wrestling. Four matches on the show. Two of them were women's matches, so 50% of the matches were featuring women, which we've talked a lot about women's wrestling and its evolution through the last several years, but more specifically here in 2025, giving them an opportunity to be showcased. And I'm gonna guess, and full disclosure, I have not watched the entire Elimination Chamber event. I did watch the highlights, if you will, on social media, but I did see uh, the from halfway through the Owens and Zayn match through the main event. Um, but I think it's important to talk about the women's Elimination Chamber match and the Elimination Chamber in general, and I think we may do a deeper dive here down the road. But this show, I feel like, and maybe I'm just because it just happened, but to me, it felt like a very important storytelling arc for the Elimination Chamber, like we've not seen before.
Mm.
In terms of the build up to WrestleMania, I couldn't tell you because I was sitting there last night as I was watching and thinking about. I know that Drew McIntyre and Seth Rollins were in that second championship match. You know, obviously it was Cody and Roman. Cody had
Mhm.
won the Royal Rumble, but I was trying to think, did Drew McIntyre win? And I'm kind of putting you on the spot, I guess. Drew
Yeah,
McIntyre must have won Elimination Chamber last year to,
I believe so. Yeah.
okay. I was trying to put the pieces together of how Drew ended up there, and so now it seems as if uh, the direction they've been going in the last couple of years is that the winner of the Elimination Chamber gets that other championship match.
Mhm.
I would argue this year, though, it's a bigger deal. That match is going to be a bigger deal than the Royal Rumble winner of Jey
Mhm.
Uso versus Gunther. I don't. Where do you see that match? Do you? I don't see that. Definitely not closing out night two. I don't know that I necessarily see it closing out night one.
Yeah, in my mind right now, that match is on the pre-show,
Wow.
just because, you know, nothing against Gunther. I think he's been a decent champion, considering he's been champion like 80% of the time that he's been in WWE. But he's another one that I felt once he got the world title, they really haven't done much storyline with him.
Right.
And then with Jey Uso, like I said, it was a surprise Rumble victory. You know, his name was not in any consideration, but I've said it to you off air. To me, Jey Uso is the modern day Road Dog or the modern day Enzo Amore, who is very over in his catchphrase opening, but once the bell rings, I lose all interest. And
I
that's me personally, and I know other fans will disagree. And that's, it's, hey, to each their own. But for me personally, Gunther Jey Uso doesn't right now have any, especially since Jey just lost on Saturday night's main event the week before Royal Rumble.
think that's what's doing it for me. That I can't get that. I'm with you. I
Mm-hmm.
can't get it. And I know it's different in 2025 than it was in the 80s, but imagine Axe winning the Royal Rumble and then challenging the Macho Man at WrestleMania 5, for example.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel right. And I'm still kind of in that mindset, even though Jay has proven seemingly has proven. I would say he's a step above Road Dogg and Enzo, but I get the correlation with the catchphrase
Mm-hmm.
and to me it was amazing watching. I don't remember what event it might have been Raw last week.
Mm-hmm.
The crowd reaction and everybody doing the
Yeeting.
eating and stuff, but I agree. Gunther, for me, it's been kind of it is what it is. I'm still bummed that he broke the Honky Tonk Man's
Yeah.
record for IC championship, length as IC champ. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But yeah, I don't see, and now I'm in my mind's, I'm spinning back to
Mm.
WrestleMania 40. Obviously, oh, it was the tag team. I was trying to remember what closed out night one of WrestleMania 40, but it was Cody and Seth
Mm.
against Rock and Roman. So okay, so night two, I think we'll get to that in just a few minutes. I think we all know what's closing out night two, but night one I
Mm.
think is still open. And I'll be honest, I love Bianca Belair, and and now we're getting to the Elimination Chamber part of
Mm.
this, I guess, too. And I love Rhea Ripley, and I know she's got to get through Io Sky still, but that's on one side. And then Charlotte and Tiffany Stratton, and we'll talk about that here
Mm.
too. But I don't, I think that night one main event is up in the air. It could really be one of several, but none of them right now is compelling enough for me to say, yeah, this should close out the show.
Nope.
What say you?
I would say if I had to put money down right now, I would say it's going to be Bianca versus Rhea versus Io Sky. I think something's going to happen in the Rhea Io match on Raw to end in a non-decisive winner, and they'll go with a three-way.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, I mean, other than that, I'm trying to think of what other matches are hinted at. And I will give WWE credit right now. That Elimination Chamber match, really both of them to an extent, you could have had anybody win. And we even said it back at Royal Rumble, where again, didn't expect Jey Uso to win, but the number of potential winners is probably more than there has been in the last, well, maybe ever.
Yeah.
Um, and the way that they've tied all the storylines together makes sense.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that they could do, but honestly, as you said, is it a lot that I'm looking forward to? I don't know about that, but I understand the story, and I understand the fans' interest in those matches.
And I'm going to play devil's advocate for myself
Yeah.
here and kind of call myself out. Yeah, again, Bianca Belair and Rhea Ripley are in my
Mm,
current women's wrestling Mount Rushmore.
mm,
I think highly of both of them. But I just sat here and talked about Jey Uso being a tag team wrestler, and I know
mm,
Bianca just lost the tag team titles with
yeah.
Naomi a week or two ago. But I know that, and this is why I argued the women's side. I don't know that I would have ever created women's tag team champions. I get the IC and I get the US, and I think that they
Mm,
took too long coming up with those. But to me, it's always been, other than, I do think that Naomi and Bianca and Jade Cargill made a good unit, and the Iconics obviously from
mm,
several years ago. But beyond those two, I don't see women's tag team wrestling
yeah.
being a thing like it is with the men. Like especially back in the '80s when you had the British Bulldogs and the Killer Bees and the Heart Foundation, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe the Sisters of Destruction with Beth Phoenix and Natty Neidhart, but beyond that, I feel like it's just kind of been a couple of women they've thrown together, and okay, we've got these belts, so we have to
Yeah.
do something with them. So, and maybe I'm being nitpicky on that, but I guess being a women's tag team wrestler is not the same as Jey Uso going for the championship as it
Mm.
is Bianca Belair going for the championship. And I know I'm kind of talking in circles, but did you see an issue with Bianca winning and being the one to go for the belt?
My only issue would be, now we could talk about what actually happened in the match. So, all the competitors are out in the match. It starts off with Naomi versus Liv Morgan,
Mm-hmm.
and then Jade Cargill makes her return and
Mm-hmm.
storms down to the ring, no pun intended. But, my question that I asked you before we started recording is, why did they open the door and let Jade in?
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't in the match. There was no reason, I mean, I understand what the reason why she was there, but the logic of letting her get into the cage isn't there.
Yeah.
She should have attacked Naomi on her way to the ring or before the door was closed, come running out. But you needed, to hit the theme music, let people know, build up the suspense. And I think they did well how they've played it off that Liv was the attacker. And so they, had that doubt before she
Right.
switched. And this is again where when you start reading things online and speculation, and then it gets into your head, even though it may have never been planned, I thought it was going to be Bianca Belair was the attacker. And so I think I would rather see Jade versus Bianca than Jade versus Naomi.
Right. And that's why I was surprised to see Bianca win, because
Mm-hmm.
I still thought in my head Bianca's behind this somehow. She's the
Yeah.
mastermind, and Naomi was the one that did it. But it also makes sense that it would have been Naomi acting alone because she wanted, because,
Because
and
she took
correct
the
me if I'm
spot.
wrong,
Yeah.
yeah, it kind of worked that Freebird rule out, and then she
Yeah.
just kind of slid into that tag team championship without actually winning the belts, right? Or
Hmm.
am I misrepresenting that? Did they
Say
win the
again.
belts as a tag team, or was it just kind of shifted
I
over?
think they just kind of shifted over
That's
to,
what I thought. I thought it was kind of
yeah.
like a Freebird rule
Yeah.
where now Naomi is the tag team. I thought that
Yeah.
was the case, but I wasn't 100% sure, because I think that all went down before I was watching Raw again regularly on with Netflix being
Mhm.
there. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see if they do Jade versus Naomi at WrestleMania. I'm assuming that's where that's going to head to. But
But really, you wanted Nia Jax to come out and be the attacker and say she did it for The Rock, didn't you?
yes, of
Or
course.
actually, I guess Naomi. I guess it works with Naomi. If Naomi says she did it for The Rock, since she's married to,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
she learned it from her Kishi
yeah. She's bloodline by marriage, I
marriage.
guess.
Yeah.
So that does make sense. But I agree with you. You know, any of those women could have ended up winning and
Mm,
sliding in because again, I feel like some of the stories with the women in terms of, you know, we've seen Liv and Rhea going on basically since before SummerSlam. So
mm,
it is time, I think, to probably move on and get some
yeah.
fresh blood into the championship picture. And I
Yeah.
think, and someone will correct me if I'm wrong, with the exception of last year, I think that Bianca Belair has been a part of the women's championship match
Mm,
every WrestleMania that she's been a part of.
mm,
Uh, I
yeah.
don't know that for 100% fact, but I know the year she won it from Sasha Banks, then she beat Becky Lynch one year for it.
Mm. She
She
beat
defended,
Asuka.
she defended it against Asuka the year we were there. Last year it was that 6-woman tag, and now this year
Mm,
she's back in the hunt for it. So,
yeah.
but also, you know, we're still what 6 weeks or so away from
Hmm.
WrestleMania, so I think
It
that
is.
there's a lot that can happen in that time period. That do you think having this much of a gap between Elimination Chamber and WrestleMania hurts or helps? Would you, because I guess we'll get more time to build up, hopefully, this and maybe get interest in the Jimmy Uso
Yeah.
or Jey Uso Gunther match and some of the others.
Yeah. I think it's all going to come down to stories they're telling and how they do it. Because I think one, yes, it's good to give the time to build up the match, but if you go too long, how do you keep it fresh without, you know, kind of running the same interactions into the ground? Since WWE's sort of, MO in building feuds is having people fight every week or interact every week. Um, so it will be interesting to see. And real quick, going back to your comment about you don't know if you see that the women's title match being the main event, and I think part of that is you know I think Rhea versus Bianca one match would be very good, but the Rhea's character, like I said, over the last year hasn't done much other than feud with Liv Morgan, and I think that's part of my issue is that these long-term feuds make people stale because it's just again the same thing week after week, and you're like, okay, what's new? What There's no real growth in the character.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but
Yeah.
I feel like also Rhea Ripley, for example, I thought
Mm,
she was a badass heel. I loved her as the heel persona. I still enjoy her in this role, but I think
mm,
that she's lost maybe some of her edge, I guess.
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But then also with Tiffany Stratton, I feel like she, was that kind of, and I feel like it's also happening with Chelsea Green, where these women are like dislikable. I'm not going to say hateable, but they're
Mm.
dislikable enough that to me,
Character wise, let's say.
character wise, that's
Yeah.
what makes them appealing, I guess. Tiffany is that kind of Barbie, pink and
Hmm.
ribbons and bows and all that. That is just kind of that annoying, and then Chelsea's that annoying kind of sorority girl
Canadian.
that you want to just kind of, you know, and they've gotten over, I feel like, with the crowd. And so now I'm guessing since we saw Tiffy and Trish team up, that Tiffany's going to go into WrestleMania as the babyface against a heel
Mm,
Charlotte, which I agree should be as well. Charlotte should be the
mm,
heel, but and I don't necessarily want to see Charlotte and Rhea for the third time at WrestleMania in what 5 years, but
mm.
I don't know. I guess I feel like they're turning too many of the women into faces during a time where they could be. I think that Tiffany Stratton could still be an effective heel, but I
Mm.
don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, is that the case where, like you said, they're heels, but they're good at what they do, so the fans start cheering them.
Yeah.
It's like, we've said it before. the only time I cheered Hulk Hogan was at WrestleMania 1 because I hated Roddy Piper. But and I mean, and you look at the Piper's career in the later stages, he became a face because people liked him
Right.
because he was good at what he did.
Yeah.
Um, and you look at Stone Cold, he was a heel until he started, you know, he didn't change anything about his personality, but the fans took to it. And I think the NWO kind of made it um, cool. It made it cool to be a heel. And I guess that's the thing is you have cool heels and then you have heels that just want to be hated. And I'm trying to think of someone like that now today. And my mind's got blank, but that's the thing is like if the heel kind of plays into the crowd reaction, eventually the crowd's going to start to like them.
Right.
And I don't know how how you can prevent that, but I do think once you turn the heel face, that they do lose a bit of the edge because now it's um, they want you to like them, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I've heard this said on countless podcasts. There are no
Mhm.
more like chicken shit heels. They all want to
Mhm.
be cool. And I would argue, I'm not going to say they ruined it, but I think everything changed in 1996 with the NWO.
Mhm.
And if they, Paul and Nash specifically, I think people still dislike Hogan, but for different
Right.
reasons. But Hall and Nash were those cool heels. Austin became a, even when he was kind of in that transitional phase.
Mhm.
Bret Hart, I think, was effective being, that whole storyline when he was a face basically everywhere around the world and a heel in the United States. So I guess maybe MJF is
Yeah.
is still an effective heel. I don't watch enough AEW to know, but it does seem like he gets a positive reaction from the crowd from time to time. Because I didn't they kind of flirt back and forth and go back and forth with him being a heel and a face, and when
Yeah,
he came back.
yes, and I just started recently rewatching AEW on Max from the beginning, and I forgot that MJF was a face aligned with Cody Rhodes in the first
Mm,
few months. Uh, but yeah, he came back as a face, but then part of that was ruined by the whole Adam Cole Devil storyline, where they had to somehow pay off Cole turning heel on MJF, but all of a sudden now MJF is the good guy and Cole's the good guy as well. Like the whole dynamic did not work, and that angle should have been scrapped as soon as Cole got injured and should have been released. But that's another story. Um, so, but I think MJF right now is kind of he wants to be the dastardly heel, but I think he's more of the like go away heel. Like all of his stuff is very cheap and it's very repetitive. Um, so yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And there's that go away heel, that go away heat
Mhm.
that people get. That I guess back in the day they called that X-Pac heat or whatever it was, Jeff Jarrett heat, versus someone like a Rowdy Piper or a Ric Flair, in the '80s, where but eventually, they become cool to the eyes of some fans, and we want to cheer them. We start liking them. Austin is another great example of that. I think that because I was like you in '85 with Piper and Hogan. I was on Hogan's side, and I didn't like Roddy Piper. And then you look back, and it's like they were doing their job. They
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
that's they didn't want us to like them, and they weren't afraid to um, get booed or have people
Yeah.
throw stuff at them. And I don't think probably since the Attitude Era we've seen like really
Yeah.
truly effective
Dude, heels.
bad guys out
Yeah, and I think when Jericho was heel in WWE in his last run, like he didn't want merchandise because he didn't want people to buy, and be in the crowd supporting him. He wanted
there. Right.
to be booed. So
Yeah, because I can remember.
that's also a factor. Is like, are you willing to sacrifice royalties to get your character over?
Yeah, like going back to the 80s, and this is in like the very early stages of WWF going global. Um, you know, I had a Junkyard Dog t-shirt. I know obviously Hulk Hogan had t-shirts and stuff. And I did have a Rowdy Piper shirt, but it was insulting to Piper. It said
Mm,
real men don't wear skirts or something along
mm,
those lines. And he had this grimace on his face or whatever. So the merchandise was kind of meant to make fun of the
mm.
heel as well. But yeah, I agree. 20, what, 7 years later, 28 years later, 29 years later, God, holy cow, time flies. That NWO shirt is still probably
Popular.
top 10 best sellers on WWE Shop right now. And, the Austin 316, which I know eventually Austin 316, I always kind of thought of Austin as a tweener, even in those early, once
Hmm.
he disassociated with Ted DiBiase, I kind of viewed him as a tweener. But anyway, it's an interesting dynamic. And I guess, what I'm saying is, I don't know what I'm saying, but
I
I feel like,
think our topic was just when heels turn face, they lose their edge, and that's an issue that's going on right now in WWE. I mean,
mhm. And I
so
almost
I mean,
too much
I
has
would
happened.
even, yeah, I would even say, Roman Reigns is another
Yeah.
factor of that.
Yeah.
Where again, he hasn't. I mean, he hasn't changed anything. He still doesn't show up for work, but the crowd likes him now.
Hmm.
And does it affect the character? Well, we'll
Yeah.
find out in 6 weeks when he shows up.
Yeah. And we'll get to more of this heel face talk here in just a few minutes. But I did want to also mention the Kevin Owens Sami Zayn match. And this is where I was kind of going with what I could perceive as a potential main event for night one, and
Mm.
that's putting these two in Hell in a Cell or doing something as the kind of the blow off because what was the stip on at Elimination Chamber? Was it just a street fight
Unsanctioned,
or
unsanctioned.
unsanctioned? Um, which again, I chuckle at we talk about
Yeah.
wrestling logic and you're having an unsanctioned match, but these two to me it is kind of, and until I met you and saw some Ring of Honor and stuff, I didn't know much about either, El Generico or Kevin Owens or Kevin Steen. And I believe, weren't they, I don't know if it was the main event, but didn't they wrestle at the Ring of Honor show we went to in Chicago?
The one at 22 or
No, not in Chicago. When we went, yeah, I wasn't it in Chicago when we went to, and then we went to Lafayette, Indiana. It was the
oh,
week,
that was the Chikara
but there was a
Ring of
Ring of
Honor
Honor
show.
show on that Saturday, and I feel like it was Owens and or
I
Kevin
don't know
Steen
because I know on the
and Eric.
Chikara show, Generico took on Sarah Del Rey, and then Kevin Steen took on Eddie Kingston,
Okay,
title versus title. But um, I don't remember the Ring of Honor show. I'd have to look it up.
we'll look it up and I'll post an update. But I thought it was, but maybe it wasn't. But anyway, I guess what I'm saying is I like the fact that WWE acknowledges the past with these two and isn't afraid to kind of cover it up. I think at one time they would have, and maybe if Ring of Honor were a bigger threat, or if we were still in that Monday Night War era, they wouldn't recognize wrestlers past like they do now. I mean, I can remember them not acknowledging guys like Harley Race and Dusty Rhodes when they came in. But anyway, I digress.
Mm.
Uh, I could see that being a big enough match, especially now with the injuries that I'm sure Sami Zayn is going to be off TV for a bit nursing. A big comeback at WrestleMania and getting his comeuppance against Kevin Owens. I would be shocked if we don't see at least some sort of stiff match at WrestleMania between those two. Maybe not closing out a show, but I definitely see it as being a potential great match. Even though, and we talk about the repetitiveness, but I feel like those two have this special kind of thing going on where I would buy into a match with them at WrestleMania because I don't think they've ever faced off at WrestleMania either, other than in maybe that multi-man ladder match.
So you don't think It'll be Owens versus Randy Orton.
As soon as I said all that, I'm like, you know
Uh,
what? Then there's the Randy factor. So yeah, you're probably right. I didn't even think about that.
yeah, and again, but then where does that leave Sami Zayn?
Hmm.
Um, for because I don't think he's going to be left off WrestleMania,
Right.
but yeah, I think it's going to be Owens versus
You're right.
Randy. Um,
I didn't even think about
and
that. You're right.
yeah, and that's unfortunate for me because one guy I like and the other guy is the one that I would use as a concession break or bathroom break. Uh, but I mean, I think it'll be fine. And just going back, the Ring of Honor show was Kevin Steen and Jimmy Jacobs versus El Generico and BJ Whitmer.
Okay.
So yeah, I have zero recollection of that.
I just
I,
remember them being in the ring together and it being mentioned that it was a big deal because I this was that I guess I had been to a Ring of Honor show before because
mhm,
by this time, yeah, you had already left and moved to California. So,
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, forgot about old Randy Orton.
Well,
I
I
like
mean, it's
Randy
easy to
Orton.
forget about Randy.
I
So
I like the fact that he's back and I know that you and I disagree on that, but it'll be interesting to see. And I'm yeah, I guess
yeah, and again, will that match have a stipulation, or will it just be a you would think if a guy tries to injure you and put you out that you wouldn't want to wrestle a straight wrestling match, but then you look back at WrestleMania 25 when Randy Orton was taking out all the McMahons and was in
right.
a blood feud with Triple H, and they wrestled for way, way too long.
Yes, that was not good. I do agree with you on that one too. So yeah, I guess we'll get Randy and Kevin Owens in some sort of
Yeah,
match, and I'll be curious to see what happens with Sami Zayn. I hope they don't make it a triple threat or a tag team
make him the
match.
special referee.
Yeah, he wouldn't be biased.
Right.
Main event time for Elimination Chamber, and I don't, I found it interesting that the way they did the eliminations and they kind of took them out. I think I would have put Priest out first, but I think they're putting Priest and
Drew together
Drew
for a
McIntyre together for a reason, obviously. Um, I think Damian Priest was probably, even though he is a former champion, was probably the one that felt the most out of place in that match for me. Again, it just hasn't clicked. It hasn't resonated. Any of those other five, I could have seen winning the match and been okay with it. Um, I really thought for a second there maybe Seth Rollins was going to steal a victory with the way things were kind of winding down. But I mean, what are your thoughts? What did you think? Did you think Cena was going to win going into this show?
I I probably had a little bit expectation that Cena would win just because his retirement tour, you put him in the main event at WrestleMania to um, give him that last hurrah, and especially after losing to Austin Theory in the opening match at his last WrestleMania appearance.
Yeah.
So you try to make good on that. But I figured it wouldn't be Priest. I didn't figure it'd be Logan Paul because he's already faced Cody in a match. And I don't, I Priest and Logan Paul, I don't think, going back to what we've said many times on the show, is that I don't think that's a WrestleMania main event worthy match.
Mm-hmm.
There was rumors, and I had tried to avoid them, and then I saw because somebody on a message board didn't put it in a spoiler tag, and I read it that Drew McIntyre was going to win, and that was like a couple hours before Elimination Chamber, um, and I thought, okay, I could see that, Drew winning, but yeah, I wasn't sure. Again, I wasn't sure who was going to win because again, Seth has the issue with Roman, Punk has the issue with Drew and Seth. No one really has a clear cut feud with Cody, which on one hand is not good because again, as we've said, you got to build up to the interest in the match. But on the other hand, is good because then when the problems with usually Rumble and Elimination Chambers, you know exactly who's going to win because you know who's feuding with the champion. So
Right.
this was a good thing, you know. And I think after everything played out, I think Cena was the probably the right choice, though I don't know if it's the right story, if that makes sense.
Well, we'll talk about that, and I want to get
Yeah.
more from you on that. I thought it played out, I don't want to say perfectly, but it was,
Mm,
I loved the closing sequence of Punk eliminating Seth Rollins getting eliminated, and then
mm,
Punk or him coming at, because, and again, it's all about the presentation and the
yeah,
production,
yeah.
because Seth Rollins is eliminated. He's gone in my head, but he wasn't. And Punk, the way he fell over the rope
Mm,
and got curb stomped, I mean, it was beautifully done. And when Cena took advantage of that, I was like,
mm,
hmm, this doesn't feel like a John Cena thing.
uh,
And so I thought, well, maybe something's going to happen and Cena's going to end up getting screwed here. Because I
mm,
thought maybe we were going to head down the path of, because they kept talking about Punk's never main evented a WrestleMania, and that was his big thing. And
mm,
this would be his first WrestleMania where he can actually wrestle at since he's returned. So I thought
mm,
I could see, and then you know there being this relationship apparently at one point where Paul Heyman and Paul Heyman owes CM Punk a favor or
mm.
whatever. So I'm like, okay, I could see this playing out to where Heyman's going to come back and help Punk win this, and that didn't happen. When Cena won, and I still was
Mhm.
not thinking we were headed to where we were headed. Um,
Yeah.
my Peacock, for whatever reason, decided to buffer just as Cody came to the ring, and I'm like, God. So I got out, reset it, and everything, and I didn't miss anything, luckily. But um, when the embrace happened and the look on Cena's face, I'm like, okay. It took me that long, and I honestly am happy that it took me that long to figure it out because it was a legitimate surprise for me. I
Mhm.
did not expect it. I think a lot of people were kind of like, "Oh, you can't have Cena and Cody because they're both baby faces,"
Amazing.
and I noticed the crowd last night. There were a couple of times where we got the "Let's go Cena, Cena sucks" chants, which I think is kind of partly genuine, but I think it's also part of the show.
It's
These
like the
days.
ankle sucks chance. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, I loved it. I loved it, and I can't wait to see where this goes. And I'll go out, and I've seen others say this, but
Mhm.
I'm gonna join the crowd that says this is probably the biggest heel turn since '96 with Hogan and joining the NWO, going
Yeah.
Hollywood. People have been clamoring for this for decades, I think, at this
Mhm.
point, and it's finally happened. I think it's interesting timing. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I hope they don't just erase all of this after
Postman.
WrestleMania. But I guess I want to get your thoughts on the turn and then what happens at WrestleMania, because I feel like in an instant they have made Cody now the marked man, the underdog, and have built up some, in my view at least,
Mhm.
I view Cody differently today than I did watching the show prior to this. So I, I have a vested interest now. I find it intriguing and interesting, and think Cody is has got the deck stacked against him. Who's going to be, yeah, coming out to help him? Because eventually you kind of expect that, but then also, will they go with Cena winning it and being this dick on the last 9 months of
Mhm.
his time in WWE? So I'll let you talk.
Well, before Elimination Chamber, I was expecting to come on here and give my contrarian take of the week and
Uh,
say that The Rock being on WWE TV is actually hurting the product because granted I haven't watched SmackDown the last couple of weeks. I've only heard about the promos and seen small clips,
uh,
but I think the fact that you have The Rock showing up as final boss on some shows and corporate Dwayne showing up at other times has hurt the storytelling because again, it's that suspension of disbelief. And it's like, okay, well, are we supposed to cheer or boo this week. We don't
Yeah.
know. And then, and embracing Cody at the first Raw on Netflix and totally erasing the last year of storyline. But, I was surprised that I've seen other takes like that online as well. So I guess it's not as hot of a take as I thought it was. And then last at Elimination Chamber, I'm like, I'm still not buying the final boss character. But it was a surprise. I think it was probably the right call in what they did. I was surprised that they didn't bleep Cody's response. So I knew that, had to be set up beforehand. So they knew to tell the censors not to bleep it.
Yeah.
And then, to Cena's credit, I didn't think about him taking advantage of the CM Punk elimination, but there was nothing in his mannerisms leading up to the ending that made you think, at
Right.
least in my mind, I didn't notice anything like,
Yeah,
a
he was
lot of,
standing. I mean, he was back when he clapped and applauded when
yeah,
Cody told Rock to go F himself or whatever.
yeah.
So
And
yeah.
even when he came out, he was the same, there's I guess certain wrestlers have a reputation of having what they call the boo-boo face.
Hmm.
They're going to lose, and so they like signal the end of the match when they come out.
Yeah.
But Cena, to his credit, was just like Cena that we've always seen, just with a bigger bald spot.
Poor guy.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. He should talk to Chavo Guerrero. And but Cena turning again, shocking, and like I said, adds more heat to the match with Cody. But it also gave me flashbacks to WrestleMania 17 of Stone Cold turning and aligning with Vince.
Mhm.
And so, and now Rock being the corporate persona, you know, and I guess you could even go back to The Rock turning at Survivor Series 98 and
Mhm.
aligning with Vince. And, it's one of those things where as older fans, we're like, oh, we've seen this already. Why are they rehashing it? But to newer fans, it's new. And also, I don't see this as just a rehash of that. I mean, granted, we have to wait to see where the story goes. But no, I think the fact that no one was anticipating this, there was no rumors out there. They, kept it all. And apparently they, on the initial rundown for the show, they had Cody and Rock segment set up during the show instead of at the end to, throw people off the trail. But um, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where they go, and also to see how much The Rock and Cena show up in the build up to Mania to tell the story. And is there a story, and also the story, how it gets told, and what the story actually is? Is it Cena turning because he, in order to get that 17th title victory, he sees this as the easiest, the better way to do so, or is it just turning because, hey, the fans didn't expect it, let's Russo book it, you know?
Yeah, I can't wait. And again, do you have I think many of us thought, okay, babyface Cena gets the 17th win. It's a big celebration. Everybody's happy. We all feel good about it. WrestleMania ends on a high note because even though the face of the company, modern day face of the company, has lost, he's lost to the guy who was the face for 20 years, and he's still a good guy hugging kids and making
Making babies.
dreams come true.
Oh,
Making what?
baby, you said hugging kid. I thought you were going to say kissing babies, but you said making, so I went making babies. I mean, The Rock, he likes to, he's a family man, he likes to start
Yeah.
families.
So now it puts a different dynamic on it. And or was there never any intention for Cena to break the record? And or can he break it another time? Do they end WrestleMania? Very rarely has it ended on a I don't want to say a down note, but with the other than the Triple H era, I don't remember there being a WrestleMania where the bad guy walked away and was the champion or didn't get some sort of comeuppance
See, do you
in the
remember the
process.
last WrestleMania we were attended?
Oh yeah, I guess that is true. That is true. Um, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I don't
But again,
yeah,
if it's Cena winning, even as heel, is the crowd going to boo? Or are they going to be
right. Because they
going
are
back to the cool heel factor?
you're witnessing history in the
Yeah.
process. And then, does Cena return the favor at the end of the year and Cody becomes champion again? Or and then there's another factor that we have not mentioned. And I mean, you mentioned his name earlier for a minute,
Ric
but
Flair comes back and beats Cena for the title and takes the record back.
we're tied again. What happened with Roman Reigns?
Mm-hmm.
Roman Reigns for the last, 4 or 5 years has been the main event of WrestleMania
Yeah.
on one or both nights. Where does he fit into all of this? Is he going to be the backup for Cody?
Mm-hmm.
I saw people talking about Stone Cold and some other legends and whatnot, but does it become does night one become Cena and God, I hope not, Cena and The Rock against Roman and Cody with uh what do they call it? Bloodline rules once
Mm-hmm.
again. I don't know. Where do you see Roman fitting in to this WrestleMania picture now that we've got, I guess, our two championship matches established on the
Yeah.
men's side?
I mean, given what's gone on the last few months and purely internet speculation, is it Roman Seth Punk in
Mhm.
some type of match? Um, with Paul, Paul Heyman owes Punk a favor. I don't know what that favor will be. Um, what Heyman can actually give him in storyline powers that be. But and the fact that we haven't seen Roman since, I mean, he was in the Rumble, I believe,
Yeah,
but yeah, we haven't seen him since. No one's really talked about him. And granted, we don't want the Poochie situation where you have to talk about him even when he's not there, which is what they did when he was champion. But I'll say it's kind of very AEW ish, where people just disappear until you need them back in the, to build a match. And then all of a sudden, look, here they are. Forget that you haven't seen them for, 3 months. So,
yeah. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a fun ride, I think. Probably interesting just to see because of so many factors. And, again, Cena is that Make a Wish record setter. Um, do they continue? They're selling all of this last tour or
mm-hmm.
last, hurrah merchandise. The Cena figure that is the invisible. I actually literally just bought a pair of John Cena socks from Rock Socks or whatever they're called, Rock'em Socks. But it's going to be. I think it's going to be a fun ride to see what happens. More so than if Cena would have just won, they hug, and then it's two baby faces
Yeah.
going at it at WrestleMania. Because I do think, even though Warrior Hogan at WrestleMania 6 was a huge match,
Mm-hmm.
I do think the story could have been better if one of them had turned heel in the process. So, because I think inevitably we want to have someone that we
You have to
boo
have
and
someone to
someone that
cheer
we
for.
cheer.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Anytime you put two heels or two faces in a match, the dynamic is off. And
because I think a lot of people expected it to be Cody. I saw memes last week of the Vince McMahon Austin shaking hands at the end of WrestleMania 17.
mm-hmm.
Was it 17?
Yeah.
And then Cody and The Rock in the ring together. So to me, again, that surprise factor, and in a day and age with the internet and spoilers and all of that, those moments are hard to come by. And I was legitimately surprised and taken aback to Hogan going heel for the NWO. And even I didn't think about it until you mentioned it. Rocky going corporate in '98 too was a surprise for me.
Yeah.
So, but I think this one will be more impactful for the storyline and whatnot moving
Oh, so Joe
forward.
Hendry's going to come over and
Do what?
I said, Joe Hendry, you said it's going to be impactful.
Oh,
So does that mean,
I must choose my words more carefully. So those are my thoughts, friends.
yeah.
We want to hear your thoughts as well, and
Well,
check out. Yeah,
we still have one thing that we haven't talked about
what's that?
in this whole main event scenario. Travis Scott.
Oh yeah, that is. We
Who
were
is
talking
Travis
about this
Scott?
earlier. What?
Who is Travis Scott?
I just know him as a R&B or rapper. I don't know anything. My kids know who he is, but I don't know
Yeah,
any more
yeah, I'm
about him.
old. I believe he's dating a Kardashian or a Jenner, and he had a concert that killed some people. That's all I know about Travis Scott.
I think my daughter might have been at one of his concerts. I don't know if he was at Lollapalooza or if he was at a show in Miami that she was at. But
Hmm.
anyway, I've heard the name before, and I think did they do a did McDonald's do a meal in his honor
Maybe,
too at one point? I think they did.
maybe.
I don't know. But yes, we that is not our demographic, or we're not in that demographic. But let me ask you this before we close up.
Yes, Alice Cooper should be inducted into the Hall of Fame this year.
His presence, Travis Scott's presence in the ring, did that
Hmm.
take away from the moment? Because for true hardcore wrestling,
Yeah.
who was big in '96? I don't know, but having that celebrity in the ring
Hmm.
in '96 when the NWO was formed, I, to me, he was far enough in the background that I was like paying attention to it. And again, I know
Yeah.
in today's day and age, people that know Travis Scott are going to maybe share this video now with their non-wrestling friends
Yeah.
that may say, "Oh, wow, Travis Scott's in wrestling," or whatever the case may be. So I get it. But to me, as an old school traditionalist, I would have rather just been Cody. I
Yeah.
can see the three pack of figures now of Cody, Rock, and John Cena.
Yeah.
Cody with a bloody head variant and kind of the fun behind that if they go that route. But anyway, what did you think? Did it detract from or take away from the moment in your view?
No, it did nothing either way. I was just
Either
surprised
way,
he wasn't smoking a blunt this time like he did at Raw. So
well, I
no,
think he.
I
Go
again,
ahead.
I don't really know who Travis Scott is. I don't. He was just kind of there. He wasn't the focal point or anything. So
Right. Yeah, that's true.
yeah,
That is true. Just there as the
yeah.
backup. So we're gonna have lots to talk about in the coming weeks. So be sure to stay tuned for more updates. We'll catch up. I'll catch up with Chad on the heels of AEW Revolution and find out how that show went. And again, uh, check us out on Facebook. We have a Facebook group as well as the YouTube channel, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff as well. Friends, thank you for listening and or watching, and we will see you next time.